to you. Welcome to Capitals Uncovered, the Martin, Sieff and Pelle Neroth Taylor podcast. We've on two sides, both sides of the Atlantic, one in New Jersey and one in Northern Europe, Sweden precisely. And we've got Rasheed Muhammad with us, who's the host of the Red Pill Diaries podcast, which I was honored to be on a few months ago, and which is famously, there was the film The Matrix. Do you choose a blue pill and live your normal life, or do you choose truth? And a lot of our podcasts, and we're all kind of red pilled or black pilled, or some people say, which is the idea that you should accept the bad world we're in and not try to change it. But I think red pill suggests that you can think, because once you took the red pill, you realized you were in a rigged game, and then you thought you were part of a rebel movement that tried to upset the sort of vast leviathan that controls the people still sleeping their sort of sleep, and feeding the leviathan with their life experiences or whatever. It's probably as well known as Star Wars, The Matrix, so it's probably superfluous to many people. Well, we're going to focus a little bit on America today, what's going on in American domestic politics. Not a particular news story, but the general feel. And I'm going to talk now from a European perspective, which is that, people are really upset and really worried about the Iran war, because energy prices are spiking. And the UK and Germany already have the highest electricity prices in the world. Germany is rapidly deindustrializing. Britain is not doing much better. And the war in Ukraine doesn't look like ending. But there's a vague feeling that so King Charles, I should say, goes over, and with his well-oiled experience, very, very received standing ovations, and basically begging America to join in the war against Ukraine. But we've got so there's a feeling that even though you've got Trump, things seem to have quietened down, and you're actually leading. You've got positive economic growth in the US, and some wiser or more knowledgeable people see that the Trump, you might not like him or not. What he's doing is looking after American interests by seizing oil in Venezuela, making deals with Alberta in Canada, closing off the Persian Gulf so that Iran, China, and Russia can't get their oil. So ensuring that the world will be beholden to American oil paid for in American dollars. So the American system can continue to work for another generation, like it or not. Okay, that's a kind of vague perception. But Rasheed, you were just telling us before the show that actually America doesn't look as stable. I mean, it's actually things going on behind the scenes, as it were, that you don't see on the front pages of the New York Times or CNN. So tell us what's going on.
Well, as I was saying before we went live on the air, the media is owned by 4 or 5 giant corporations, and they censor what's actually going on in America. Do not believe the hype about freedom of speech and all of this in America. Do not believe that. And there are protests daily across America about the dire consequences and the dire situation that the American people and the American system is in. There's high inflation. People say, well, we may go to hyperinflation, but my thing is, if you're paying double what you paid for a week ago, and you're getting a smaller amount, that is hyperinflation. And so yes. People are, and I am in Trump territory. I'm in the Panhandle of Florida. This is Trump's stomping ground. And there were they've been protesting about no kings. They want him out of the office. You had people out there burning effigies out by the college. It was about 5 or 6,000 people out there, and this happened on multiple occasions in the last month and a half. So, as the front and talked about a cohesive America and a destabilized and divided Iran, it's actually projection, because it's vice versa.
Wow. So basically, I mean, Florida, the home of Trumpism, if you like, and they call it the Alamo of Trump, and the conservatives back in 2024, someone told me everyone's trying to buy a property near Trump so they can influence him. There are no kings demonstrations there.
There are no kings demonstrations, and I live in like in the United States, you have what you call the city and you have the county. I live in the county area of Metro Pensacola, which is a diehard Trump area. And they've had no Kings protests here. I know at least 3 times in the last month. I know that. And I'm talking about all out from the colleges all the way down to the shopping malls on either side of the street, up and down, left and right. And they're hanging effigies of Trump. They're burning effigies. And these are people who had MAGA shirts on, and they're taking MAGA shirts off and they're throwing them on the ground, stuffing them. And I was going to film it, but I had previous obligations. So when I came back, the protest had died down, which was like maybe 4 or 5 hours later, but there were still a few people out there. And to give you a comparison, I only saw about 3 people, 3 to 5, I believe, that were still holding pro-Trump signs. And I was seeing people who were formerly pro-Trump throwing the MAGA hat on the ground, stomping it, taking the shirts off, and they were just they had effigies of him, beating him, and all of this. So this is what's going on behind the scenes, and this is why Trump is so erratic, and he is he takes offense to anything you see, and what he wants the world to perceive him as a strong leader who has maximum support from the people and can do no wrong. But in reality, as we said before the show, as the people put on the celebration of a 250th year for the United States from its birth, I also think that this is a time that they are realizing that this is also the death and they're mourning the death of the American empire.
Wow. Well, it's interesting. I mean, Martin, I mean, there's a World Cup. And so America is coming this summer, and the 250th anniversary on the 4th of July. So America will be even more in the world's focus than ever before. And what we're getting now is a heads up of what we might expect. America being out of the new international news cycle for a while. I mean, after the election, we focused on Iran and Ukraine. So we might be in for a shock. What do you say, Martin? Is that true that there's a lot of anti-Trump movements?
I believe it is. I fully agree with you, Rasheed. And we're down in New Jersey, and I've also been hearing from friends across the heartland. And I want to follow this up with you because I think you've hit a third rail here. You've hit central nerve, and that, from my perspective. But correct me if I'm wrong. That there are 2 issues that people are inflamed about. You've already named them. One is Iran. They're going the endless war there, and the second one is the inflation. Because there was this sense that even if you hated Trump, even if you loathed so much of what he stood for, even if you were horrified by ICE and disgusted by the bluster, he knew how to handle the economy. He knew how to keep energy prices down. But as we see, even here in Jersey, energy prices are soaring all over the place, and the Gulf of Hormuz is a nightmare situation. And I also look forward to have you comment on what I'm hearing from people in Republican circles in Washington is there's a great deal of panic and despair and even growing realism there. Pelle and I have been privately discussing, well, we've seen reports that J.D. Vance, who certainly has a political brain in his head, has already made up his mind not to run for the presidency in 2028 because he knows it will be a sacrificial lamb year. And I can see from the look on your face that you're way ahead on the analysis on this too. Could you explore these issues or correct me where I'm going wrong on this?
I think you're absolutely right. Trump, the people they're so I would say disappointed in Trump, and the reason is he promised them the world and gave them nothing,
yes,
but despair. And I want to go to something that you said that there's a big misperception of. A lot of people voted for Trump because they thought that he was a good businessman and that he could run the country.
Yes,
but if you look at Trump's history, Trump was not a great businessman. And he filed bankruptcy multiple times and he was bailed out multiple times by big banks, and he even left a lot of creditors holding the bag. So if we look at that in real terms, what they're getting from Trump right now is exactly what he gave when he was a businessman. He is running the country into the ground like he ran the casinos and the businesses into the ground. And a lot of people are getting mad because they are now starting to realize that he sold them a bill of goods, and that not only is he not coherent in his policies, but he is a narcissistic businessman, and we can see that in the policies with Iran. And I want to touch on this Iran thing real quick because it's very important and it's tied
Please
to the
go
gas.
ahead.
A lot of people think that the Iran issue is just about oil, and it has a lot to do with oil, but it has more to do with trying to maintain the U.S. petrodollar and to try to maintain empire. Lindsey Graham, Congressman Lindsey Graham, let the cat out of the bag after the illegal seizure of a sitting president in Venezuela. And he said that now that we control Venezuela's oil, water supply, because Venezuela has a huge amount of fresh water. That's why America had her eyes on Greenland, because Greenland has huge amounts of untapped fresh water. Also, this gets left out of conversation. And so America is fighting for resources because this is the only way the empire can continue to sustain herself. And Lindsey Graham says that if we can capture Iran, we then sit on 33% of the world's oil and gas supplies, which means that regardless of what goes on, the U.S. petrodollar will still have some type of backing, which means that the United States could still run up deficits, which could still spin into oblivion, even with 33% of the world's oil and gas supplies, because they would still have trade would still be done in that, even with 33%. But right now, America is facing the loss of her position as the global hegemon is because of the debt spending, no financial backing, no true sound backing of her dollar, and nations are moving out of her assets and her dollar. And I think that this, what we're seeing, is a mad push for survival for those in power to try to maintain American hegemony.
Why are you not Secretary of the Treasury, Rasheed? And I am not joking. Because, first of all, you put it so clearly. Secondly, you bring in hugely important issues like this water dimension that nobody talks about. And thirdly, you bring up something. I'm so old, I'm of an age. I grew up in the decline and fall of the British Empire when I grew up in Ireland in the 1950s and 60s. And I didn't think that, the history would move so fast that I'd see the complete collapse of another plutocratic empire spanning the world in my lifetime so fast. But as you say, here it goes. But what I see are describing is something the Brits did as well, and the Spanish and the Germans did before them. And that is, when the empire is going down, the sensible thing to do is to cut your losses, save what you can, draw in your horns. In the 1950s and 60s, when the real world empire was going, the Brits actually started doing that. Not very well, but eventually under Thatcher, and rather very ruthlessly, of course. But they woke up for a while, and now they've forgotten it all again. Now they're mad little global imperialists again, as we both well see. But here in America, like you say, these plans that they're doing, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong again, but they're mad plans. They're insane. They're in denial. There's not the slightest chance they could ever pull them off. And yet they're trying to. What's going on?
Well, I mean, as Rasheed said, as I understand it, was that America needs empire because it can't keep on funding its... Yeah.
No, go on, Rasheed. Yes.
The delay here, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over anyone.
No, please, please go ahead.
The thing is, I often say this on my podcast. When you are in a bad position and you become frantic, anything irrational becomes rational to an irrational person. But the people who are rational, who are looking from the outside, understand that every policy move that this person is making is irrational. So sometimes, when you find a person that's frantic, you have to, and they're crying or they're amped up. Sometimes you have to smack them once or twice to bring them to calm them down. And I think what's going on now is Iran is smacking the empire to bring them down to size, so that they can realize that the world has changed from the 1940s. We're in a new paradigm. And so you have these people who are put in positions of power, or the deep state, or whatever you want to call it, or the military industrial complex. They're so embedded into what America used to be, the power and the influence and the riches that America used to possess, right? That they are willing to burn down the world to rule over the ashes. That's why there's an old saying by Richard Nixon: to be an enemy of America is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. And we can see that as she moves against Europe. Um, see, this is the one thing that it seems that Russia is not getting. This is the one thing that it seems like Europe does not understand. With America, there are no true friends. There are no true allies. There are only people that can help her attain her goal. And once you have lost your usefulness, she casts you to the side. And if you become a competitor, guess what happens? Look at Germany. Germany became a competitor. Look what happened. Do you remember in the early 80s? I don't know. For some of you who are listening, you may be young, but in the early 80s, Japan was China, right? Remember, everything was coming out of Japan. When Japan economy started to rival America's economy, America being Japan's occupier, but quote unquote ally, sabotaged the Japanese economy, bringing the Japanese economy to a halt. And this is what she's doing to Europe. She forces the sanctions. She forces a war in Ukraine. Then she forces everybody in Europe to come on board. Then she demands sanctions. Then Europeans follow suit. And then America says, "Oh, don't worry about it. We have plenty of natural gas. We have plenty of oil. We'll sell to you." And as soon as Europe shuts the Russian door to cheap natural gas and oil to be a competitor against the United States says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. We'll sell you the natural gas, but we're going to triple the price because we have to ship it. So we're going to triple the price." And this is the flim flam con artist movement of America. And as you said, and I'll stop here, but as you said, that
please.
When America looks at you, she looks at what she can get from you, not with respect, not with equality, not with any of the qualities that you and I would look at another person with. Remember this. I say that these are the 3 R's of empire when she's in trouble. She needs rest, she needs to rearm, and she needs to recalibrate. And she'll use anything to accomplish her goals. She'll engage with talks with Europe, but she'll sabotage Europe. She'll engage in talks with Russia, but then she'll supply arms to Ukraine. She'll engage in talks with China while deploying troops and weapons to the Asia Pacific. And then she'll get mad at the nations that respond. If China gives weapons to Iran, that is blasphemy. But she openly has weapons deals with Taiwan, which is recognized by the United States as a province of China. So the hypocrisy of this is helping to bring. People don't realize the debt of the published debt is roughly 39, close to $40 trillion. She is paying $1 trillion+ on interest alone. There was you can Google this, everybody. There was an article that came out about 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, or 3 weeks ago, about the U.S. Treasury. And the U.S. Treasury said that the United States was practically insolvent. That means bankrupt. So if you're in this position and you've been the power of the world, and you've been the envy of the world, and you've had all of the world look up to you as that city that sits upon the hill, and you see the house of cards tumbling, you're going to do any and everything to prevent that from happening. Therefore, we go to war. Therefore, we divide and conquer our allies, and we make more enemies. We want chaos, because out of chaos, they believe that they can make some type of new order predicated still on American dominance.
Well, Rashid, I just speak for Europe. I mean, your diagnosis is so bang on. I mean, if you were invited to a seminar or a conference hall in Germany, I mean, they wouldn't know what to say because no one can contradict you. But what's happened is that our political elites are completely vassalized, completely Americanized. So they don't actually say what's going on. Because what happened, I mean, there was a sweet spot for Germany as a leading industrial power when they had Chinese markets, cheap energy, and American protection. And as you said, and then the Americans said, "Well, we're protecting you," and well, they used that implicitly. So there was no choice; we had to go along and close off the cheap gas. And now they're trying. Now they're talking about not having a. I mean, because the European Union is 28 nations, any one nation can do a veto. So the Americans don't need to command the big countries. All they need to do is control the small countries. In this case, Finland, I think, 4 million population in a union of 600 million. They vetoed a free trade deal with China, perhaps on American orders. So, I mean, both China and Russia have been cut off. And now America, as you said, is selling expensive energy and is pulling the security out. So Europe is really screwed on all sides. I mean, it was playing a balancing game to some extent. Um, and I think, and we've got a political elite and a sclerotic political system that doesn't allow us to turf these people out because they're either in power for a long time. The media's against them. The media all aligned with the US because their owners are American oligarchs, American affiliated oligarchs, or they go to think tank or fellowships with the American deep state, the American German Marshall Fund of the US. So they're basically traitors. They're foreigners inside our own countries. They have a different master. Just like, I don't know, maybe communist Russia and the communists all around the world. No one talks about that. So there's no space except in these podcasts to talk about what you just said so accurately. And people are so kind of, I mean, we're so marinated in American popular culture and American perspectives on anything that people assume that everything America does is also good for Europe. And people are incapable of thinking independently. And if we say these things, you're a Russian agent, right? You're a spy. Rather than just a self-interested European. I think that maybe in some quarters that realization is slowly growing, but we've got a very sclerotic system, and what you said cuts through all the BS. So thank you for saying that, Martin.
Oh, absolutely. I just want to follow up again in full agreement with you, Rashid, on a point that you made that it struck me European viewers in particular might think it was just hyperbole on your part. But I think, again, you hit another crucial target when you talked about America generating chaos around the world. Now, I grew up in a world where at least I looked at and feared communism and revolution. And I looked at America as very often blundering, doing monstrous things in Vietnam. That was clear. What they were doing in Latin America didn't bear thinking about. All of this was very clear. The dark side was clear. But at the same time, infinitely, they basically represented the forces of stability ultimately, whereas the communists were the forces of chaos and evil. Now, I haven't mellowed on the communists in my lifetime now, and I don't want to. But it's again, we're caught between a rock and a hard place. Because one sees here, especially with the neoconservatives, the parents and grandparents of these people, and they're very dynastic, as I know you know, started out as Trotskyite revolutionaries. They gloried in chaos. but they still glory in chaos. And again, from the look on your face, I don't think you're going to contradict me, but feel free to, obviously. The conclusion I came to 25 and 30 years ago was, my God, these people who claim to be conservatives are actually the biggest revolutionaries of the lot. And the destructive revolutionaries, all they want is to cause chaos everywhere and smash it. And they have this mad, insane, fanatical belief, which has no rational support for it whatsoever, that if you smash everything up, then we will end up rising up to be the new philosopher kings and everything will be wonderful forever. Please take me on this one and give me your take on this.
This is absolutely correct. If we could just look to Yugoslavia
Yes.
and how they broke up Yugoslavia under trumped up charges, and they brought Milosevic before a court, and then he was exonerated. A lot of people don't understand that he was exonerated after his death or whatever. They broke this up into small fiefdoms so that the United States could move closer and closer to Russia to enact her plans from the grand chessboard of Zbigniew Brzezinski to under its control, Russia out of Europe, and China from rising.
Exactly.
And we see that then if you look at what happened in Sudan, before the United States was talking about let South Sudan vote on its independence, but a lot of people don't know that the South Sudan currency was printed 2 years before there was even an agreement on voting or for secession or to stay a part of this, and this was pushed by the United States. Everywhere there's chaos, you can see America's hand in it, and whenever it blows back on her, this is what happens. It's Europe's fault. It's Europe's fault that you're not helping in Ukraine even more. It is China's fault that things are breaking down in Asia against the Philippines or whatever. Even though America continues to push the envelope everywhere. And let me bring this point, because I don't think most people have heard about this before, but I talk about this on my show before they took down RT News in the U.S. I was watching an interview with a former Japanese prime minister, and I cannot remember his name for the life of me. And they asked him specifically about the Chinese-Japanese paradigm, and the differences between Japan and China. And he says that everything between Japan and China could be worked out. We came close to working out a deal, and the United States intervened and told us that if we were to work out a deal with China, the United States would seize the whole of the Okinawan island chain. So everywhere there's chaos, we have in mathematics. In mathematics, when you're doing mathematical problems, you always look for that common denominator. Look in Asia, you see America. West Asia, you see America. Look in Africa, you see America. Look in Europe, you see America. Look in Latin America, in the Caribbean. And everywhere this chaos spreads, America is never at fault. It's always somebody else. She's in Iran, and she's saying that Iran is the terrorist. She's saying she has isolated Europe to a point of breaking, because Europe has little natural resources and depends on trade with other nations, gas from Russia, gas from Africa, gas from Central Asia. And she is saying that Europe has not paid its dues, even though the United States has bases all across Europe, right? And Europe hasn't paid its dues, and they need to up the defense budget while people are suffering. Think about it. People are suffering. They're not getting the benefits. They're not getting the health care. They're not getting the jobs. They're losing family because they can't keep this together. And America is concerned about upping the military budget, as she is doing at home. This shows you the maniacal thinking of those in power. And I laid that example for you because a lot of people, they look at the American establishment naively.
Yes.
And they don't understand that this is ingrained in the system. You may come with an idea, but once that idea meets the system changes you. You don't change the system. We look at
Yes.
Barack Obama. We look at Joe Biden. Now we look at Trump. Drain the swamp, change, all these mantras. What happened? The system didn't change. It only got worse. Those who pushed those mantras changed or were revealed once they were in elected office. So my thing is, as we look at the 250 year of the American Republic, we also have to look at it as the celebration of the death of an empire, because that's where we are. They celebrate the birth of the nation, but we're celebrating the death of an empire that has its grips and tentacles across the world, creating chaos.
Rasheed, I mean, that's a good way to end. We've our podcast only a few minutes left to run, so it's interesting. We've seen this arc because the discussion about America, a republic versus empire, was very much part of its the founding fathers. You know, should we go in our father's footsteps? You know, it's almost like a Luke Skywalker thing. You know, England, Darth Vader saying, "I am your father. Choose the dark side. Choose the way of empire." And America going down that route, and we've seen the rise and fall of that arc. So in a way, I mean, do you see that the Republic, we've only got 3 minutes left, as a chance for America to sort of rebirth itself and map out something more positive?
In the 3 minutes left, listen to me. There is a mathematical impossibility for her debt to be paid back. If one were to go through the history of empires, all one has to do is ask the question, were they able to reconstitute themselves after doing just a fraction of what America has done, after spending a fraction of what America has spent? Remember that America is the greatest debtor nation in the history of the world. She has more debt combined than the entire history of nations in the world. And we saw Rome fall. We saw Babylon fall. We saw all kinds of empires fall with a fraction of debt, a fraction of military power, a fraction of alienating the people. And I ask you the question, how can America maintain herself in this position when she has so much debt? She's alienated the entire world, and she is no longer a producer of anything but war, weapons, and dollars.
What, Martin? You're raised in America,
all I can say now, two things. Amen to that. And Rasheed, when can we have you back, please? When can you come on again? Because we've only scratched the surface.
Anytime. I'm willing to come on anytime. I thank you, gentlemen, for having me on here, and I would love to be back here.
Well, Rasheed, it's an absolute pleasure. I think our viewers and listeners will be delighted,
joy,
because you've cut through a lot of stuff. A lot of people confused by the bigger picture, and you've laid it out so clearly that people will have a gestalt shift, one of those total realizations that will make them look at the regular news in a totally different way. I mean, they'll cut through the propaganda and see the bits that you will, the paradigm that you've given them will help them enormously. So thank you so much for that. And we've got to wind up for today. So Rasheed and Martin, see you both very soon. And Martin, our next show.
Look forward to it, Rasheed.
Thank you so much. Thanks.